She walked into the biker bar alone, 8 years old, a paper-thin voice and a dog tag clutched tight in her hand. "Which one of you is my father?" No one laughed. No one moved. Because sometimes the quietest question holds the loudest truth. What came next would unravel a forgotten identity, expose a buried betrayal, and remind a broken soldier who he really was. If stories of family honor and second chances speak to your heart, you're in the right place. Go ahead, like, share, and subscribe to Soul Moment Story for more true-to-the-heart storytelling that stays with you long after the credits roll. Now, let's begin. The late Texas sun cast long golden fingers across the dirt road as an old school bus coughed its way down Main Street and sputtered to a stop near a weather-beaten building with a rusted motorcycle out front. Above the door hung a sign, Iron Hawk's Bar, its paint chipped, but its symbol of 2 wings wrapped around a gear still visible in the amber light. The door creaked open. A girl stepped in. She couldn't have been more than 8 years old. Her jeans were worn at the knees, her red jacket 2 sizes too big. On her back, a faded backpack with a missing zipper pull. She paused in the doorway, silhouetted against the sun, then stepped forward into the dim, smoky room. Conversations hushed. Beers were lowered mid-sip. Even the jukebox in the corner playing an old Creedence track seemed to fade into silence. At the center of the bar, 4 men dressed in black leather vests turned toward her. Tattoos curled down their arms like smoke, their denim and steel chains catching glints of fading daylight. They weren't the sort of men anyone interrupted without consequence. But the girl didn't flinch. She reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out something small and metallic. A dog tag, silver scratched and swinging from a short ball chain. She held it up with 2 small hands, the tag swaying gently as she looked around the bar. Her voice trembled, but she didn't whisper. "One of you is my father." For a second, no one moved. Then the sound of a chair creaking broke the tension. Someone let out a half laugh, uncertain, almost nervous. But no one dared say anything. Not yet. From the back of the room, a deep metallic clink echoed. Cling, cling, as a wrench was dropped onto a steel tray. A man stood from behind a vintage Triumph motorcycle, wiping grease from his hands with a rag that was already too dirty to help. He was tall, lean, hair long, sun-bleached, falling past his shoulders in a way that hadn't been intentional. His face was rough, but handsome, sunburned and weathered, with the kind of quiet gravity that made people notice him without knowing why. He wore a faded green mechanic's jumpsuit, the color almost military, the fabric soft with age and use. Daniel Bray. Most people in town knew him as just the quiet one at Iron Hawk's, a mechanic who spoke only when necessary and drank his coffee black always at 6:45 a.m. sharp. He lived in a small trailer behind the shop and spent more time with engines than people. He'd been here for years. Nobody knew where he came from. He didn't know either. He stepped out from the shadows near the back wall. The light from the open door hit his eyes hazel with flecks of green, and something inside him shifted as if a long-forgotten thread had been plucked. The girl looked up at him. Her eyes were a mirror of his, and he stopped breathing. The dog tag clinked again in her hand, catching the light. Across the bar, Travis Cole, leader of the Iron Hawks, stood slowly. He was broad-shouldered, bearded, and covered in road dust and regret. He squinted between the girl and Daniel, then spoke in a low, cautious voice. "You lost, sweetheart." She shook her head, stepped closer. Her voice was steady now. "My name is Bella. My mom's in the hospital. Before she went to sleep, she told me to find the man who has the other half of this." She held out the dog tag. Everyone stared at it, but only one man's hands began to tremble. Daniel took a hesitant step forward. His boots echoed softly on the wood floor. Something in his chest tightened, something buried deep for too long. He didn't understand why, but his legs felt weak. Bella looked at him, and then slowly her fingers reached into her backpack again. She pulled out the second half. It was cracked, like the first, but where hers had been jagged and incomplete, his stored in a drawer in his trailer for years, forgotten, had matched perfectly. He knew it even before she held it up. Daniel reached into his jumpsuit pocket almost without realizing. When he drew out the other tag, the bar fell completely silent. He walked toward her. Bella's hands reached out, both tags now dangling, and she stepped forward until the two halves were only inches apart. Cling. They clicked together. Perfect fit. Daniel froze, and then like the sudden breach of a dam, images flooded into his mind. A white tent, screams, blood, fire, a woman's face, a child's cry, a helicopter above, the smell of sand and diesel, hands holding his. Pain, a cold table, the metal tag falling from his neck torn in two, a voice screaming his name. He staggered. The wrench tray behind him clattered as he stumbled back, gripping the bar for balance. Bella's eyes widened. Travis caught him before he fell. His arms were strong, but his voice was soft. Dan. You okay? Daniel blinked. No. Yes. He wasn't sure. He looked at the girl, his daughter, and his mouth opened, but no words came out. His hand still gripped the dog tag like a lifeline. Bella stared at him, not scared, not confused. Just waiting, as if she already knew. And maybe she did. Behind them, the rest of the bikers slowly backed away, unsure what to do with the holy moment they had just witnessed. Travis let out a breath. Well, hell. Outside, the sun dipped lower, casting a warm orange glow across the horizon. Inside the bar, two broken halves had just become whole, and nothing would ever be the same again. The bar had fallen into a reverent hush, like a church right before a sermon. The girl Bella stood still, her small fingers still holding the fused dog tags between her and the man she called Dad. And the man, Daniel Bray, couldn't move. Not because he didn't want to, because something inside him had snapped loose. Or maybe, finally snapped into place. He sat alone now near the back of the garage behind the Iron Hawk's bar, where the concrete smelled of oil and metal. The evening wind slipped through the half-cracked window, ruffling the corners of a faded American flag pinned to the wall. It was the only decoration in the otherwise stripped-down space. Just Daniel, his tools, and a vintage Harley he'd been rebuilding for years and never had the heart to finish. But tonight he couldn't touch the bike, not with his hands still trembling. He sat on a dented stool, staring at the two halves of the dog tag now rejoined. You remember how you got here? Daniel nodded once. Woke up in the hospital. No ID. Dog tag broken in half. Said I was lucky to be alive, but they couldn't match me to any unit. Records got lost or erased. They listed me as Bray D, unidentified combat medic. Eventually, they stopped asking questions. And then Daniel's jaw flexed. I started over, hitchhiked west until my legs gave out outside your bar. Travis cracked a dry smile. You were wearing that green jumpsuit. Looked like a ghost. I felt like one. Silence again. Daniel rubbed the dog tag between his thumb and forefinger. I thought maybe I was a deserter, or a traitor, or just some broken thing someone didn't want back. You're not, Travis said firmly. I don't know who you were, but I've seen who you are. Daniel looked up, brows furrowed. For years, Travis continued. You patched up our guys, helped with busted bikes, broken ribs, even a stabbing. Never asked for anything, never even raised your voice. You kept us steady, like some kind of anchor. He paused. And now a little girl walks in with your name around her neck. Daniel leaned back, exhaling a breath that felt too heavy for his lungs. I didn't know I had a daughter. You think she's wrong? Daniel didn't answer. But he didn't say no. Later that night, while the others drifted off to their homes or bunks, Bella remained awake on the couch, her little legs tucked under her, watching the garage door. Daniel approached slowly, uncertain of every step. She looked up as he entered, but didn't say anything. He knelt down to her level slowly, carefully, as if afraid he might shatter something sacred. I don't remember much, he said, voice low. But when I saw you, it felt like the world stood still. Bella nodded, holding the mug of cocoa tight. Mom said if I ever got lost, I should listen to the feeling in my chest, the one that knows where home is, even if your brain forgets. Daniel stared at her. And that feeling brought you here. She nodded again. He swallowed hard. What's your mom's name, Tessa? That name. It dropped into his mind like a stone in a still lake. Tessa. A flash, her laugh, long brown hair in the wind, a white sundress stained with desert dust, the warmth of a hand in his, a whisper in the dark. Come back to me. He closed his eyes, pain and clarity colliding in his skull like a thunderclap. He didn't need to remember everything. He knew enough now to understand what mattered. Daniel looked at Bella again, really looked at her. She had her mother's eyes, but the shape of her face was his. Her presence stirred something deep in his bones. Not fear, not doubt. Hope. I don't know how to be a father, he said. Bella shrugged, eyes soft, but certain. That's okay. I'll teach you. Daniel let out a breath that turned into a quiet laugh, rusty and rough, but real. And for the first time in what felt like forever, he felt the air in his lungs do something more than just keep him alive. It healed. That night, long after Bella had fallen asleep in the guest room upstairs, Daniel stood alone in the garage again. The sky outside was deep blue, speckled with stars, and the silence felt gentler somehow. He lifted the dog tag once more and hung it gently from the rearview mirror of the half-finished Harley. Its metal surface glinted under the workbench lamp, casting a tiny reflection on the wall. Not just a name, a beginning. A question had walked into the bar that evening, but in its place it left something greater, a reason to remember. Morning came slow over the Texas plains, spilling light through the dusty blinds of the Ironhawk's garage. The first thing Daniel noticed when he woke was the quiet hum of an engine idling somewhere outside. The second thing was the sound of a small voice humming along. Bella sat cross-legged on the concrete floor beside his workbench, drawing something on a scrap piece of cardboard with a stub of charcoal. The dog tag, their dog tag, hung around her neck, tapping gently against her chin with every movement. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck, groggy, but watching her fascinated. For 8 years he had woken up to silence, to the smell of oil and steel, to the hollow echo of not knowing who he was. Now there was singing, and the faint scent of cocoa powder on her hair. "What are you drawing?" he asked quietly. Bella smiled without looking up. "You." That startled him. "Me." She nodded her hand, moving fast and sure. "You fixing a bike, and me helping." Daniel knelt beside her. The sketch was crude, but alive. A man in a green jacket bent over an engine, a small girl holding a wrench beside him. Above them, she'd scrawled something in uneven letters. Home. Daniel's throat tightened. He didn't know if he deserved that word, but hearing it felt like stepping into sunlight after years in the dark. Travis walked in, brushing dust off his jacket. "Mornin' sunshine," he said to Bella with a half smile. Then to Daniel. "You got visitors." Daniel frowned. "Visitors." Travis jerked his head toward the bar. Couple of nurses from the county hospital. Said they were looking for a girl named Bella Bray. Bella's eyes lit up. "Mom," she whispered. Daniel's pulse kicked up. Within minutes, they were on the road, Travis driving his old Ford pickup. Bella wedged between him and Daniel, clutching the dog tag like a lifeline. The wind roared through the half-open window, warm and dry, carrying the scent of sagebrush and asphalt. She talked the whole way about her school, the shelter where she and her mother had stayed the day her mom got sick. She spoke in bursts, as if afraid the story might vanish if she didn't get it all out. Daniel listened, every word carving itself into him. When she said Mom went to sleep 2 days ago and hasn't woken up yet, something inside him cracked open again. He stared out at the horizon. Tessa. The name had haunted his dreams all night, and now the thought of seeing her again made his heart pound and his chest ache in equal measure. The hospital sat at the edge of town, a squat white building with peeling paint and a parking lot full of dust-covered cars. Inside, the smell of antiseptic hit him like a wave. Bella ran ahead through the corridors past nurses and orderlies, straight to room 214. Daniel followed slower, heavier his boots, echoing on the linoleum like memories. When he stepped inside, the world seemed to narrow. Tessa Bray lay on the bed, pale and fragile tubes running from her wrist and nose. But even under the hospital's harsh light, she was still beautiful. Her hair had grown shorter, streaked with gray, but her features, soft, kind, unmistakable, brought every fragmented memory slamming back into focus. The desert, the explosion, her scream. Daniel gripped the doorframe to steady himself. Bella climbed onto the bed and took her mother's hand. "Mom, I found him," she whispered. Daniel felt his breath leave him. Tessa didn't stir. A nurse entered behind him, clipboard in hand. "She's in a coma," she explained gently. "Head trauma and oxygen loss. But the doctor says her brain waves show activity. Like she's fighting her way back." Daniel nodded mutely. The nurse looked from him to Bella. She kept saying your names before she went under, over and over. Daniel and Bella. That was all it took. He moved to the bedside, kneeling down beside his daughter. His hand hovered above Tessa's, uncertain, afraid. Then Bella took his fingers and pressed them gently onto her mother's palm. Warm. Real. Daniel swallowed hard. His voice was barely a whisper. "Tessa, it's me." "Nothing." He tried again, his voice cracking this time. "It's Daniel." Still nothing. Bella reached into her pocket and pulled out the dog tag. "She said this would find you," she murmured. She said it belonged to the bravest man she ever knew. Daniel looked down at the cold metal. His reflection shimmered faintly. In it, blurred imperfect. A man caught between past and present. He leaned closer to Tessa's ear. "You were right," he whispered. It did. Hours passed in silence. The beeping of machines became the rhythm of the room. Bella dozed in the chair beside her mother, hand still clutching the tag. Daniel sat across from them, elbows on his knees, eyes distant. He remembered now not all of it, but enough. The blast, the betrayal, a man's voice yelling orders through chaos, the sharp pain in his leg, the taste of blood, and Tessa's face as he was dragged into a chopper, her scream fading beneath the roar of the blades. He thought he'd died that day. He thought they both had. A sound broke his thoughts, Bella's small, sleepy voice. "She told me something before she closed her eyes," she murmured. Daniel looked at her. "What did she say?" Bella's gaze softened. She said, "When you find your father, tell him to forgive himself, because we already did." The words hit him harder than any wound. He covered his face with his hands, shoulders shaking. The weight of all those years, the guilt, the silence, the self-blame crashed over him. When he finally looked up again, he noticed something strange. Tessa's fingers had moved, just slightly, but enough. Bella gasped. "Mom," a faint tremor passed through Tessa's hand, her eyelids twitching like someone dreaming through a storm. The heart monitor quickened, steady but stronger. Daniel's hand found hers again, gripping tighter this time. "Come back," he whispered fiercely. "You don't have to fight alone." For a heartbeat, he could have sworn she smiled. Then the nurse rushed in, calling for the doctor, and Daniel was ushered out into the hallway as the medical team surrounded the bed. Bella stayed inside her small voice, repeating softly, "It's okay, Mom. He's here. Dad's here." Daniel stood in the corridor, leaning against the wall, trembling from exhaustion, and something deeper, hope. He hadn't felt it in years. And as the door closed, the sound of the dog tag clinking against the metal bed rail echoed faintly through the sterile hall. Cling, cling, like the heartbeat of a memory coming back to life. The rain came in the middle of the night, a quiet, steady drizzle tapping on the tin roof above the Iron Hawk's bar like a distant metronome. Daniel sat alone in the dark garage, the smell of motor oil and storm-drenched soil drifting through the open door. Beside him on the workbench lay the old dog tag reunited halves, still stained with the fingerprints of a daughter and a past he was only beginning to believe belonged to him. He couldn't sleep. Not after what happened at the hospital. Tessa had moved. She'd responded to his voice. The doctors said it was only a reflex. Involuntary motor response, one of them muttered, without even looking up from the chart. But Daniel knew better. A man doesn't forget the rhythm of the woman he once promised forever to. And that small, fluttering twitch in her fingers, it was hers, not some cold impulse. She was in there, fighting. And that meant he had to fight too. But first he had to remember. The storm outside deepened. Wind howled across the flatlands like wolves mourning something ancient. Daniel closed his eyes and breathed deep. Then it came again like a thunderclap in the distance of his mind. Fire. Screams. Metal twisting like bones. He saw it clearly this time. The convoy in Syria. The sand-brown Humvee convulsing with the force of the explosion. Smoke, thick and black, swallowing everything in seconds. Blood on his hands, not his own. A Marine with half a face. A medic's bag torn open on the dirt. And running toward him. Tessa. Not as a dream, but as memory. She was yelling his name. "Daniel, Daniel, fall back." "They've sold us out." He stumbled toward her, cradling a wounded soldier voice, hoarse from smoke. "Get Bella out. Take the GPS. Go." She threw herself forward just as the second blast lit up the sky so close he felt his bones rattle. And then, darkness. Daniel gasped, his eyes snapping open. Sweat slicked his face despite the cold. His hand reached for the dog tag like it was the only thing keeping him grounded. He stood slowly walking to the mirror above the sink in the corner of the garage. The man staring back at him looked the same. Hair-long eyes tired, but something had shifted. His eyes no longer looked empty. They looked like a man who'd seen war and lived. Just before sunrise, Daniel stepped out into the gravel lot behind the bar. The rain had passed, leaving the air cool and clean. Travis was already there, sipping black coffee from a chipped mug and staring off into the wide open sky. "You look like you saw a ghost," he said without turning. "I think I did," Daniel replied. But this time the ghost was me. Travis nodded like he understood more than he let on. Daniel sat beside him on the hood of the truck. "I remember now," he said. "Not everything, but enough." Travis raised an eyebrow. The convoy, the attack, the betrayal. Someone on the inside gave up our location. I was part of a medevac team running support near Raqqa. We were helping a local village innocents. Kids. But someone didn't like that. They sold our coordinates. Travis's jaw clenched. Who Daniel stared ahead, voice turning colder. There was a security officer, military intelligence. He was supposed to protect us. But I heard him that night, over the comms. He used a code phrase, "clean sweep." That was the signal. He gave us up. What happened, I tried to get my team out. Got Tessa to the evac point. I thought Bella was with her. But something went wrong. The explosion tore everything apart. I woke up 3 days later in a field hospital with no name, no records, and half a dog tag. He paused. And a hole in my soul. Travis said nothing for a while. Then, with the quiet certainty of a man who had once ridden with outlaws and lived to change his ways, he asked, "You remember the name of the one who betrayed you?" Daniel looked over slowly. I didn't then. But now, I'm sure of it. A long breath. Detective Dalton Pierce. Travis went still. That can't be. Dalton works downtown now, deputy chief, in fact. Decorated. Claims he served honorably. Says he brought back bodies of 3 Delta Force medics under fire. Local hero. He lied. Daniel said, eyes blazing. I was one of those medics. Travis stood and dumped the rest of his coffee into the gravel. Then it looks like it's time we stir up some old dirt. Back inside the bar, Bella had just woken up. She padded barefoot into the garage, rubbing her eyes and blinking against the rising sun. Daniel met her with a soft smile and a hug that lasted longer than either of them expected. "I remember your mom now," he said gently. "I remember the day you were born. You had hair like a cloud and screamed so loud the nurse covered her ears." Bella giggled, eyes wide. "And do you remember me now?" Daniel nodded, pressing his hand to her chest. "I remember this," he said. "Your heart. I heard it the first time you said my name." Bella leaned her head on his shoulder, holding the dog tag in one hand. "You remembered," she whispered. "Yeah," he said, softly. "And now, we finish what we started." That evening, the Iron Hawks gathered at the table under the mounted deer antlers and the stained American flag on the bar's back wall. Travis stood at the head arms, folded. "Brothers," he said, "this man, right here. Daniel Bray, he's one of ours. And he's been walking around like a ghost because someone tried to erase him." He paused. "That someone's walking free, wearing a badge. And now he wants to take the girl and bury the truth." The bikers muttered curses. One of them pounded the table. "We're gonna help Daniel find the proof," Travis continued. "Because we ain't just men on bikes anymore. We're the kind of men we promised we'd become. This girl deserves to know who her father is, and that her mother wasn't left to die for nothing." He looked around the room. "Are you with me?" A chorus of rough voices answered. "Yeah, then saddle up. We ride at dawn." Daniel looked down at Bella beside him. She grinned, already wearing a tiny Iron Hawks cap one of the bikers had given her. Outside, the wind shifted, and with it came something Daniel hadn't felt in years. Direction. The kind only a father could follow. The Iron Hawks bar was quieter than usual that afternoon. Even the jukebox, normally spinning classic rock or outlaw country, sat still in the corner, like it too was holding its breath. Travis stood behind the counter, wiping a glass that didn't need wiping, eyes occasionally drifting toward the garage door. Bella sat at the bar on a high stool, sipping lemonade with both hands. Her feet didn't touch the floor, but her presence seemed to steady the place. Daniel was back in the garage, checking over the same Harley he'd worked on for years. Only now he wasn't fixing it out of habit, he was preparing it. Something was coming, and instinct told him it was closer than anyone thought. The rain had stopped, but the sky still wore the color of rust and regret. Then the door creaked open, and everything stopped. A man stepped inside his boots, heavy against the wood, his shoulders squared in that unmistakable way only someone with military training ever carried. He wore a black suit, tailored and sharp, but not to impress, just to intimidate. His short-cropped silver hair and cold, calculating eyes gave away his age, but his posture was as rigid as a loaded spring. Travis straightened, setting the glass down without looking. Bella turned in her seat, her hand drifting to the dog tag around her neck, like a child reaching for a crucifix. Daniel stepped out from the garage, his green mechanic's jumpsuit still zipped up to the neck eyes, narrowing the moment he saw the man. He knew that face, Detective Dalton Pierce. Except once upon a time he hadn't been wearing a badge. He'd been in a tan combat uniform standing behind radio equipment, with a headset on shouting orders during the last moments of a doomed medical convoy. And now, here he was. In the flesh, looking like he'd just stepped out of a courtroom. "Afternoon," Dalton said, voice calm, but flat. "I'm looking for a girl named Bella Bray." No one moved. Travis tilted his head. "Funny you don't look like Child Protective Services." Dalton gave a thin smile. "Temporary custody has been filed through proper channels. Mother's in a coma. Father." He paused, letting the moment stretch. "Deceased. I'm here to escort the girl into county care until a determination is made." Daniel stepped forward. "You know damn well I'm not dead." Dalton turned his gaze slow and deliberate toward Daniel. His expression didn't change, but the flicker in his eye did. It was brief, barely perceptible, but it was there. Recognition, then denial. "Sir," he said coldly, "I don't know who you think you are, but according to military records, Daniel Bray died in a hostile attack outside Raqqa in 2016. I personally received and processed the remains. Body was unrecoverable, but dog tags confirmed. You're not him." Bella stood up on her stool, clutching the tag around her neck. "He is my dad," she said, voice shaking. Dalton didn't even look at her. He held up a folder thick with stamped papers. "Unless you have identification, medical records, DNA, anything to prove otherwise, this girl comes with me." Travis stepped out from behind the bar. "Not gonna happen." Another biker rose from his booth, then another. Dalton scanned the room. "You really want to obstruct a lawful transfer under state jurisdiction?" Travis didn't blink. "We want you to walk out the way you came in, with your face still intact." Dalton's lips pressed together. He looked at Daniel again. "I'm giving you one chance. Back away, and I'll make sure your little reunion stays quiet. You push this, and I will bring down everything I have. Judges' warrants, federal inquiries. The VA has no record of you. You're a ghost. I can make you disappear again." Daniel stepped forward, his voice calm but razor-sharp. "Tell me something, Dalton. What's the code phrase you used the night the convoy was attacked?" Dalton blinked. "Excuse me." Daniel didn't stop. "You broadcasted it over the scrambled line, didn't you?" "Clean sweep. That's what you said before the mortars fell." Silence. A tremor flickered in Dalton's left hand, so fast most would miss it. But Daniel didn't. Bella looked up at her father. "What does it mean?" "It means," Daniel said, never taking his eyes off Dalton, "that he wasn't just a coward. He was the reason your mother and I almost died." Dalton's voice dropped. "You're delusional." Daniel stepped closer. "You sold our position. For what? A promotion? A payout. You left your own men to die, and now you're here to clean up the last piece of evidence that could ruin your perfect little career." Dalton's mask slipped just for a second, then it snapped back into place. He tucked the folder under his arm. "This conversation is over. I'll be back with law enforcement. Armed." He turned to leave, but before he could reach the door, Bella stepped in front of him, small and trembling, but unflinching. "You don't get to take me." Dalton's voice hardened. "Move, child." "No." Dalton leaned down slightly, his voice a hiss. "You think you're brave. Brave gets people killed." Daniel moved so fast no one saw it coming. One moment Dalton was standing upright. The next, he was pinned against the doorframe, Daniel's hand on his chest, like a steel plate. The entire bar tensed. Daniel leaned in, voice low. "You already killed enough people to know that, didn't you?" Dalton didn't answer. "You come near her again," Daniel said, "and I swear to God, The only thing they'll recover this time is your badge, buried in the dust where your soul used to be." Then he stepped back. Dalton adjusted his jacket, straightened his tie, and walked out without another word. The moment the door shut, the room exhaled. Travis turned to Daniel. "We just poked the devil, brother." Daniel's jaw clenched. "No." We woke him up. Bella slipped her hand into her father's. He looked down at her, and for the first time in hours smiled. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded. "I'm not scared when you're here." Daniel knelt to her level. "Then I'll never leave again." Behind them, the jukebox clicked on for the first time in hours. A song played softly, an old Johnny Cash tune about truth and redemption. And under the chorus, the faint sound of a dog tag clinked once more against Bella's chest. Cling. Cling. That night, the wind howled across the Texas plains like something feral. The Iron Hawk's bar stood stoic against the storm, its old wooden walls creaking with every gust, as if holding its breath, along with the people inside. Daniel Bray sat alone in the garage, elbows on his knees, the single overhead light casting long shadows across the concrete floor. Rain hammered the tin roof. The world outside felt chaotic, but inside his chest it was worse. A storm had begun to rise, not in the sky, but inside him. He stared at the old dog tag resting on the workbench. The two halves now fused by more than just metal, by truth, by blood, by memory. Every time he looked at it, a wave of emotion crashed through him. Guilt, grief, fury, and something deeper, a fierce primal need to protect. His daughter Bella was asleep just beyond the garage wall, curled on the couch under an old Iron Hawk's blanket, trusting that he would keep her safe. And God help him. He would. But what about Tessa? What if Dalton came for her next? What if he already had Daniel's hands balled into fists? He could still hear Dalton's voice echoing from earlier. "You're not him. I'll make you disappear again. Coward, liar, betrayer, murderer." Dalton hadn't just destroyed a convoy, he had destroyed families. He had erased Daniel's identity, tried to steal his daughter, and was now betting the system would protect him like it always had. But this time, Daniel wasn't the same broken man who wandered into Travis's garage all those years ago. Now he had something to fight for. Travis stepped into the garage without knocking. He held 2 beers and a manila folder. "I figured you'd be brooding in here." Daniel accepted the beer but didn't open it. "You find something?" Travis nodded, sitting across from him on a crate. We dug into Dalton's file. "Back when I used to ride with some rougher circles, I learned how to get past certain firewalls." He tapped the folder. "Dalton's not just dirty, he's radioactive. Over the last 10 years, he's buried 6 investigations involving illegal arms transfers, missing equipment logs, sealed field reports, and 3 accidental deaths involving military witnesses. Daniel didn't blink, including me. Exactly." Daniel flipped open the folder. There it was, a mission report dated June 12, 2016. Operation Codename Clean Sweep. The name alone made his stomach tighten. His photo, black and white, low resolution, sat in the top corner with the label Daniel Bray. KIA, recovery not possible. Daniel scoffed. "They declared me dead without even a body." "Dalton signed off on the report," Travis said. "Twice." Daniel exhaled hard through his nose. "He's trying to clean up the last loose thread. Me. Bella. Tessa." "He underestimated the thread," Travis said, almost smiling. Daniel's voice lowered. "I don't want vengeance. Not really." Travis tilted his head. "No," Daniel shook his head. "I want accountability. I want him exposed. Not just for me, but for all the ghosts he made." Travis clinked his beer against Daniel's unopened one. "Then we do this smart. We don't shoot him in the desert. We bury him in the truth." At that moment, a small knock came from the garage door. Bella peeked her head in, eyes still groggy from sleep. She wore Daniel's old army t-shirt like a nightgown. "You okay, Dad?" Daniel stood, softening instantly. He knelt to her level. "Just talking with Uncle Travis." She looked up at him with those searching eyes. "Did the storm scare you too?" He smiled gently. "It used to." Bella hugged him tightly, her head resting against his chest. "I don't like that man," she whispered. "The one in the black suit. He talks like he owns everything." Daniel held her closer. "He doesn't own you. He never will." She looked up. "Promise." Daniel nodded. "With everything I've got." Later, after Bella fell back asleep, Daniel returned to the garage alone. And this time, the memories came freely. Flashback. Smoke. Screams. Chaos. He was crawling through the wreckage, ears ringing, throat raw. He found Tessa under the flipped Humvee, blood on her arm but alive. She clutched a small bundle wrapped in a tan blanket. Bella. Their baby. He reached for them, but before he could make contact, Dalton appeared, dragging him back with force. "She's gone." "Bray, fall back. The zone is compromised." "No, they're right there." Dalton struck him hard, knocking him unconscious. Daniel's hands trembled as the flash ended. He remembered now. Dalton didn't just leave them. He made sure Daniel couldn't go back. He'd chosen secrecy over salvation. Daniel rose slowly from his stool. Tomorrow they would ride. But tonight he needed to prepare. He needed to center the storm. He stepped into the cold, removed his shirt, and sat cross-legged on the floor of the garage. The dog tag hung from a nail beside him, gently swaying in the breeze. He breathed in deeply. Then out. Again. For minutes. Then hours. He listened not to the wind or the rain, but to the silence beneath it. His training from Delta came back, not just the tactics, but the discipline, the control, the balance of steel and soul. He thought of Bella's laughter, of Tessa's touch, of Travis's loyalty, and the storm inside him. It didn't disappear, but it became sharper, quieter, a blade instead of a bomb. By dawn, Daniel was ready. He stood, wiped the sweat from his brow, and looked at the wall above the workbench. He reached for a hidden compartment behind the license plates and pulled out a small, cloth-wrapped bundle. Inside, untouched for years, lay a single photograph. Daniel, Tessa, baby Bella, his family. He folded it carefully and tucked it into his shirt pocket over his heart. Then he whispered the words he hadn't said aloud in almost a decade. "I'm coming back." It started with silence. No screaming engines. No rumbling tires. Just the empty wind curling through the alley behind the Ironhawk's bar. But then slowly the sound came first. A single motorcycle. Then another. Then a dozen more. By sunrise, the streets outside the bar echoed with the unmistakable growl of redemption on wheels. The Ironhawks were rolling out. Travis stood in front, tightening the chin strap of his helmet. Beside him, Daniel adjusted the sleeves of his green jacket, now clean, but still worn at the edges. His dog tag, polished and whole, again hung firmly against his chest. And between them sat Bella, perched on the passenger seat of Travis's Custom. Harley, her tiny helmet too big for her head, but her eyes lit with resolve. "You sure about this?" Travis asked, glancing sideways at Daniel. Daniel nodded. "She's safer with us than anywhere else. Besides, she wanted to be the one to find her mother." He looked down at Bella. "You remember what I told you?" She grinned, gripping the small sketch pad in her lap. "Stick with Travis. Don't talk to strangers. Don't let anyone touch the dog tag." Daniel smiled. "That's my girl." The mission was clear: reach the private care facility where Tessa was rumored to have been moved 2 days ago quietly, without paperwork under the radar of public hospitals. The kind of place someone like Dalton Pierce would use to keep things contained. They rode fast and low, hugging the edge of the desert highway like ghosts. The sun climbed higher, casting shadows across the landscape that looked like memories reaching back for something they'd lost. Daniel led the middle formation. He wasn't just riding to find his wife. He was riding toward the truth, and maybe finally toward becoming whole again. 2 hours later, they reached it. A small stucco complex surrounded by a white gravel lot and a chain-link fence topped with rusting barbed wire. A faded sign out front read, "St. Beatrice's Rest and Wellness Center." But everything about the place screamed facility more than healing. Travis cut the engine, raising an eyebrow. "Looks like something out of the Cold War." "Exactly, Dalton's style," Daniel muttered. Bella remained on the bike as Daniel approached the front door. Inside, the air was too still, too clean. A single receptionist glanced up with disinterest, her badge reading Carla. "Can I help you?" she asked, eyes barely flicking over his army green jacket. "I'm here for Tessa Bray. I believe she was transferred here from Galveston General 2 days ago." The receptionist froze, not obviously, but enough for Daniel to notice. A flicker in the eyes, a quick recheck of her monitor. Defensive instinct. "Sir, I'm afraid we don't have any patient by that name." Before she could finish, Daniel gently placed a laminated court petition onto the counter. Courtesy of one of Travis's legal contacts. "I have full temporary custody of her daughter, and I'm a U.S. citizen with the legal right to verify the whereabouts of my next of kin." She glanced at the paper, then at the growing crowd of bikers outside. A bead of sweat slid down her temple. "I'll check with my supervisor." She disappeared into the back. Daniel didn't wait. He stepped around the desk and walked straight down the corridor, moving with the confidence of someone who knew every inch of a military hospital layout. Room 14B. He stopped in front of the door. The air was different here, cooler, sharper, like walking into a room that remembered things. He opened the door. There she was. Tessa Bray lay unconscious just as before, but something had changed. Her body wasn't limp like last time. Her hands rested calmly on the blanket, and her chest rose and fell in steady rhythm. She looked peaceful, alive. And suddenly, Daniel felt like his knees might buckle. He stepped inside, crossing to her bedside. He touched her fingers. They were warm, softer than he remembered, but unmistakably hers. Bella peeked through the doorway, eyes wide. Daniel turned and nodded. She ran in quietly and placed a small drawing next to the bed, 3 stick figures hand in hand. Labeled Mom, Dad, Me. "I knew she was still fighting," Bella whispered. Daniel took her hand, and then, without warning, Tessa stirred. Her head shifted slightly. A breath caught in her throat. And then, her eyes opened, slowly, blinking, adjusting. Bella froze. "Tessa," Daniel whispered, voice cracking. She blinked again, turned slowly toward the voice, and let her eyes focus on his face. For a moment, nothing. Just quiet. Then her lips parted, barely a breath. "Daniel." He fell to his knees beside the bed. "I'm here." He choked. "I'm here." She looked past him toward the small figure holding the dog tag. "Bella," she whispered. A tear slipped from her eye. "You found him." The girl nodded, tears welling. "I didn't have to look far. He was waiting the whole time." Daniel held Tessa's hand in both of his. "I remember now. All of it." She nodded slowly. "I never stopped believing you'd come back." Neither spoke for a long while, because there was nothing more important than this moment. Outside, Travis was pacing when Daniel finally stepped out. "She's awake," Daniel said, smiling through exhaustion. Travis gave a short, stunned laugh. "Well, I'll be damned." Daniel looked toward the horizon, expression tightening. "But that also means Dalton knows she's vulnerable now. He'll come for her. Or try to silence her again." Travis didn't hesitate. Then we take her somewhere safe." Daniel looked back toward the building. "She needs time to regain strength, but when she's ready, she'll speak. And when she does, we'll make sure the world hears her." Travis nodded. "We'll get her somewhere better. Off-grid. Protected." Daniel nodded, jaw clenched. "And then we bring Dalton down the right way. We use proof." Travis raised a brow. "You think she has it?" Daniel's fingers tapped the pocket of his jacket where Tessa's dog tag had a hidden microchip slotted inside. "I think she's had it all along." He turned to Travis. "And it's time we show the world the man who tried to bury us was never the hero they believed." The safe house was nothing more than a refurbished farmhouse on the edge of the Texas plains, faded white siding, a rusted windmill spinning slowly in the breeze, and a wraparound porch that creaked under every step. But to Daniel, it might as well have been a sanctuary. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of chamomile tea leather and dust. Travis had called in a few favors securing the place through an old war buddy who owed him 3.5 miracles. Tessa now rested in the back room, her vitals stable, her voice returning more each day. She sat propped against pillows, a soft blanket over her lap, the dog tag resting against her collarbone like a pendant of memory. Daniel sat beside her, gently holding her hand, as Bella read a picture book aloud from the floor, her voice rising and falling like a lullaby for the past. But what hung in the air wasn't just healing. It was truth waiting to be spoken. Then Dalton's voice again. Collateral. Click. Silence. Travis exhaled slowly, eyes dark. "Well, that's the ball game." Tessa looked pale, her hand trembling as she covered her mouth. Daniel's jaw flexed. "This is enough to bury him, not just in court, in history." Travis nodded. "Only if we get it to the right people." Daniel stood staring out the window toward the horizon. No leaks, no social media. We go straight to someone who can't be bought, like who Travis asked. Daniel turned. A 4-star general, someone who still believes in the oath. The next day, Tessa was strong enough to walk. Daniel helped her out to the porch, where she sat wrapped in a shawl, sipping tea, the sun warming her face. Her voice had grown stronger, though still lined with fragility. She turned to him. "There's something else." Daniel looked up. "What I had a contact. After you were gone, I didn't believe you were dead, no matter what Dalton said. So I found a reporter, Chloe Carter. She works for a small veterans' rights outlet. She's not for sale." Daniel nodded. "Where is she now? Still writing? Still digging?" "I sent her copies of my medical files, the photos, the debrief I wrote before the Army classified everything." "You trust her?" "With my life," Tessa said simply. Daniel stood. "Then we bring her in." That evening, the team gathered around the laptop. Again, Daniel, Tessa, Travis, and Bella reviewing the files, cataloging everything. Every minute of the recording. Every timestamp. Tessa's medical history. The flight logs. Dalton's signature on requisition forms, tied to missing humanitarian aid. They were building a case brick by brick, not with revenge, but with righteous precision. Travis rubbed his chin. "When this hits, he'll spin hard. Say it's fabricated. Say you're just a ghost with an agenda." Daniel looked him in the eye. "Then we prove I'm not." How Daniel opened the closet, pulling out the faded duffel bag he'd stored for years. Inside it, his original Delta Force uniform, blood-stained, torn, burned at the seams, but still his. He held it up. "We tell the truth," he said, down to the last stitch. Later that night, Daniel sat by Tessa's side as she slept. Bella had curled up in a hammock outside, safe under the moonlight. He held the dog tag in his hands and whispered into the silence. "You were right to keep fighting. I forgot who I was, but I never forgot you." And just as the wind blew softly through the open window, a faint, steady rhythm of breath beside him reminded him They had made it. But tomorrow, the real war would begin. The farmhouse was quiet under the weight of a coming storm. Not the kind that thunders through the Texas hills, but one made of courtrooms and headlines, betrayal, and buried truths. And in the center of it all sat a small micro SD card so light in Daniel's hand, yet heavy enough to tip the balance of justice. It was time to make it count. He doesn't get to walk away while the rest of us carry scars. Travis grunted in agreement. This ain't revenge, it's balance. Chloe opened her laptop and slid the micro SD card into an adapter. We'll verify everything locally. I have forensic software that timestamps and validates embedded metadata can't be altered. If this is legit, the audio recordings and mission files will align with classified incident reports. That'll give us corroboration. Daniel leaned back, arms crossed. How long will it take? A few hours, she said. But once I confirm its authenticity, I'll upload everything to a secure digital vault and prepare a public statement timed release. Military watchdogs, veteran groups, Senate Oversight Committee. She paused. Are you ready for the world to know who you are? Daniel glanced toward the window, where Bella played with a paper airplane in the golden light of dusk. Her laughter floated through the screen door like a song he never thought he'd hear again. He turned back to Chloe. Yes, it's time. I remember fighting to get to you, and Dalton pulling me back. He looked away for a moment. I remember the betrayal and the helplessness. Tessa squeezed his hand. You came back to us. That's what matters. No, he said, locking eyes with her. What matters is you never stopped fighting. He's the kind of man who never lets blood cloud honor. He needs to know what his son became. Chloe pursed her lips, nodding. I can arrange a meeting. That night, Daniel sat outside under a sky smeared with stars, Bella resting her head in his lap, half asleep. She opened her eyes just enough to murmur, Is the bad man going to jail? Yes, baby, Daniel whispered, brushing hair from her face, and this time, there's no one to cover for him. She smiled, clutching the dog tag around her neck. Then Mommy can rest. Daniel looked toward the bedroom window, where Tessa's lamp glowed softly. A shadow moved across the curtain, his wife, his anchor, watching over them all. He looked back to the sky. The war inside him had once taken everything. Now it had given something back. A name, a purpose, a family, and a file that would bring down the man who tried to destroy it all. Daniel nodded. If we wait, Dalton makes the first move. He already did, Tessa replied. 8 years ago. Now it's your turn. He walked over and gently kissed her forehead. I'll be back before nightfall. She smiled. Bring your daughter home safe, and bring your name back with you. All around him, fists rose in silent unity. Daniel stepped forward, his dog tag glinting in the rising sun. I don't need backup, he said, but I'm honored to have it. Travis smirked. We know, but we're coming anyway. The convoy tore down the highway like thunder incarnate. 24 bikes' engines growling in unison, led by Daniel and Travis side by side. Bella rode in the chase truck with Chloe and 2 of the younger Ironhawks. She grinned wide, a pair of aviator sunglasses slipping down her nose, the dog tag bouncing gently against her chest. They weren't just going to deliver an envelope. They were going to deliver a reckoning. The Western Defense Command headquarters rose like a steel monument outside Austin glass, and concrete guarded by MPs in full dress. Cameras tracked the bikers as they rolled up the sounds of their engines, causing more than one officer to stiffen. Daniel stepped off his bike and removed his helmet. The guards raised their hands, but before they could speak, Chloe walked up behind him, credentials in hand. Chloe Carter. Press. Scheduled appointment with General Charles Dalton verified by Lieutenant Reeves. The guards checked her ID, then looked at Daniel. This your escort? No, Chloe replied. He's the witness. The guards exchanged a look, then nodded. Follow me. But this will be swift. Daniel exhaled. Thank you, sir. The general nodded once. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Not just as a soldier, as a father. Daniel offered a small, tired smile. So am I. An hour later, the Ironhawk's convoy rolled out again, this time. Slower, quieter. But their purpose had never been louder. As the afternoon sun cut through the clouds, Travis pulled up beside Daniel and nodded toward the radio playing in the lead truck. Turn it up. A breaking news report came through the speakers. Deputy Chief Dalton Pierce has been placed under federal investigation this morning following a series of explosive allegations related to military misconduct and falsified death records. In the rearview mirror, Daniel could see Bella's face light up. He touched the dog tag over his chest and smiled. Justice had begun. But more than that, his name was no longer a ghost. It was a promise. The Ironhawk's bar was quiet again, but not because the storm had passed, because it was about to break. Inside, the air felt thick electric. Travis stood behind the counter polishing a glass that didn't need it, an old habit when the air got too heavy. The jukebox sat idle in the corner. Lights dimmed. A few of the regulars were there, bikers who knew what it meant when a man said we might have company. Daniel Bray stood at the far end of the bar, the same place where weeks earlier a little girl had held up a broken dog tag and changed everything. Now that tag hung around Bella's neck again, hole gleaming softly in the afternoon light, filtering through the blinds. She sat beside him, sketchbook in hand, unaware that her drawings of motorcycles and sunsets sat atop a bar counter waiting for justice to walk through the front door. And he would. Daniel knew Dalton Pierce wouldn't go quietly, because men like Dalton never believed the rules applied to them, not when they'd spent a lifetime bending them like wire. He simply looked to Daniel, then to Travis, and gave a quiet nod. One of the marshals stepped forward. Dalton Pierce, you are under arrest for falsification of military records, conspiracy to commit fraud, obstruction of justice, and endangering the lives of U.S. service personnel. The cuffs clicked. Dalton's jaw tensed, but he didn't resist. He glanced at his father as they began to lead him away. You're letting them do this to me. The general finally spoke, voice like granite. No. You did this to yourself. After the SUV disappeared down the road, the bar remained silent for a long moment. Then Bella slid off her stool and walked to her father. Is it over? She asked. Daniel knelt to meet her eyes. Almost. She tilted her head. What now? He looked at the crowd around them. Bikers, reporters, veterans, friends. Then back to her. Now, we live. The jukebox crackled. For the first time in weeks, it came to life. A familiar song drifted out Johnny Cash again. A slow, steady rhythm about truth, regret, and redemption. Daniel scooped Bella into his arms. She rested her head on his shoulder, eyes closing, finally safe. Travis stepped up, grinning. Remind me never to bet against you again, brother. Daniel smiled. Don't bet against a man with something to protect. And as the afternoon sun lit up the bar and the old dog tag gleamed gently against Daniel's chest, there was no need for words anymore. The confrontation was over, but the journey wasn't. Not yet. The Ironhawk's bar was empty now. Not in the physical sense, chairs were back in place. Travis stood behind the counter humming under his breath, and a few loyal regulars nursed their drinks in quiet corners. But there was an unmistakable stillness, like the world had exhaled after holding its breath for too long. The confrontation was over. Dalton was in custody. The world knew the truth. And yet Daniel Bray sat alone in the garage, elbows on his knees, the familiar clink of tools and scent of motor oil surrounding him like a second skin. Except Tate. He wasn't fixing anything. He was unraveling. Outside, the Texas sky bled into soft gold as the sun began its descent. The light hit the dust in the air just right, turning the workshop into a halo of suspended motion. But Daniel couldn't see it. He held the dog tag in his hands, his name engraved deep into its weathered surface. Daniel Bray. MIA. O-neg. But no tag could tell the story of what it had taken to earn those 3 letters back. Footsteps approached slowly. Tessa entered the garage, quietly dressed in a soft cardigan and jeans. Her recovery had been swift, but not easy. Her steps were steadier, her eyes clearer, but the weight of years still lingered in her posture. She didn't say anything at first, just sat down beside him. For a while they sat in silence. Only the wind moved. Daniel spoke first. "I thought I'd feel triumphant." Tessa looked at him gently. "And I don't." He set the dog tag down on the bench. "I feel tired. Not in my body, in my soul." Tessa reached for his hand. "You've been holding everyone together for so long." "Bella." "Me." "The fight. Now that it's over, your heart doesn't know what to do." He nodded. "Exactly." His voice cracked on the last syllable, and he turned away quickly, eyes welling. It wasn't the sharp kind of pain, the type that rages like fire. It was slow, heavy, the kind that weighs a man down until he forgets what it feels like to breathe freely. Tessa scooted closer, laying her head on his shoulder. "You're allowed to feel broken, Daniel, even after winning. Especially after winning." He finally looked at her. "I didn't know if I'd live long enough to see Bella smile without fear. To hear her say she's proud of me, to hold you and know it's not a dream." He swallowed hard. "And now that I've got it, I'm scared I'll lose it again." Tessa squeezed his hand. "You won't. Not this time." They sat like that for a long while, letting the light fade and the silence fill the space like warm water. Later that evening, Daniel stood on the back porch alone, watching Bella chase fireflies across the yard, with one of Travis's old bandanas tied like a cape around her shoulders. She laughed, spinning and darting through the tall grass, the dog tag bouncing against her chest with every step. She was free. And for the first time, Daniel saw her not as a memory rescued, but as a life unfolding. Tessa joined him, handing him a cup of coffee. She said she wants to frame the dog tag next to her drawing, the one where we're all holding hands. Daniel smiled softly. She sees the world the way it should be. Tessa leaned on the railing beside him. "Maybe now you can too." Daniel looked out over the land, the old windmill creaking gently, the sky glowing orange, Bella's silhouette dancing like a spark in the dusk. "I want to be done surviving," he said. "I want to start living." Tessa touched his arm. "Then do it." He turned to her, his voice barely above a whisper, but how she didn't answer with words. She reached into her sweater pocket and pulled out a small folded piece of paper. He opened it. It was Bella's drawing, crudely done colors spilling outside the lines, but unmistakably them. A little girl, a mother with a kind smile, and a man in a green jacket with long hair holding both their hands. Above it, in block letters, "My family, my heroes." Daniel stared at it for a long moment. Then he broke. The sob hit him like a wave, silent at first, just a tightening in the chest, a crack in the breath. Then another. His shoulders trembled, his eyes flooded. And finally he let go. Tears spilled down his cheeks, the years of holding it in every battlefield, every lost memory, every silent night in that garage, poured out in quiet, gasping sobs. Tessa pulled him close, holding him the way only someone who had waited 8 years for this moment could. And he wept, for the man he used to be, for the years they lost, for the little girl who had walked into a biker bar and saved him with nothing but a dog tag and hope. When the tears finally slowed, Daniel straightened, breathing deeply. The air felt different, now cooler, clearer. He wiped his eyes and looked toward the yard. Bella stood there, watching quietly. He opened his arms. She ran into them without hesitation. "I saw you crying," she whispered into his chest. Daniel chuckled through tears. "Yeah, I guess I couldn't hold it in anymore." She looked up at him. "That's okay. Heroes cry too." He kissed the top of her head. "You taught me that." That night, after Bella had gone to bed, Daniel sat on the front steps with Travis and a bottle of aged bourbon between them. Neither spoke much. Then Travis muttered, "You done carrying it all yet?" Daniel stared into the stars. "Almost." Travis nodded. "When you're ready to let the rest go, we'll burn that jacket together." Daniel looked down at the green field coat. Every scar, every thread, every memory. Soon, he thought. But not yet. He still had one chapter left to write. The sky over Texas was clear that morning, crisp blue with soft streaks of white, drifting like quiet applause across the horizon. It was December 15th. And in a sleepy town, where dusty roads led to memories and miracles alike, something extraordinary was about to be remembered. Inside the Iron Hawk's bar, laughter echoed across the walls, not the rough, raucous kind, but warm, genuine, almost tender. Travis stood on a stool near the back wall, hammering the final nail into a wooden plaque he'd handcrafted himself. The smell of fresh pine mixed with motor oil and old leather filled the room like incense for the congregation that had gathered. The bar had been cleaned, top to bottom. Walls, scrubbed floors, waxed flags dusted. But no one touched the corner of the room where the plaque now hung. There, framed in glass, rested 2 dog tags, one cracked down the center, now fused back together. Below them, carved into a simple wooden plate. December 15th. The day a little girl brought her father home. Bella stood front and center, her hands clasped in front of her, wearing a white cotton dress with small sunflowers stitched along the hem. Around her neck, she wore a paper version of the dog tag, drawn, cut, and laminated with tape, her own tribute to the metal, one resting forever on the wall. Next to her stood Daniel, trimmed and freshly shaven, still wearing the same green field jacket, now patched with a small Iron Hawk's pin near the collar. His long hair was pulled back, revealing a face that no longer looked like a ghost. It looked like a father. Tessa stood at his side, radiant in her recovery, her arm looped through his. And behind them, the full force of the Iron Hawks filled the bar leather and denim, mixing with silent pride. Travis cleared his throat, stepping off the stool and turning to face the group. "I remember the day this little girl walked in like a lightning bolt," he said. "Dog tag in one hand, destiny in the other. We all thought she was lost." He paused, glancing toward Bella. Turns out she wasn't lost. She was leading. A soft chuckle rippled through the room. And that man Travis continued gesturing to Daniel came in here a broken memory. But today he's more than just our brother. He's a soldier restored, a father reclaimed, and a symbol of what happens when you don't let silence win. He stepped aside, letting Daniel approach. The room fell into reverent quiet. Daniel looked at the plaque for a long time before speaking. His voice, when it came, was steady but thick with meaning. 8 years ago, I lost everything I thought I was. My name, my past, my family. I was ready to accept that I was no one, that my story ended on a battlefield overseas. He looked at Bella, who smiled up at him like sunshine. "And then she walked through that door," he said, voice cracking. "And she didn't just find me, she reminded me who I am, what I stood for, what I left behind." He turned to the group. You didn't ask me to explain. You gave me space, a job, a community. And now I stand here not just as Daniel Bray, but as a father, a husband, and a man who found his way home. A beat of silence, then applause. Not thunderous, but warm, like the sound of something being sealed with love. After the ceremony, the bar turned into something more like a family picnic. Burgers on the grill, music on the jukebox, and kids running between tables. Bella danced with two of the biker wives, her paper dog tag flapping proudly with every spin. Tessa sat at a table with Chloe Carter, laughing over cups of lemonade as they reviewed the finalized feature story, Ghost No More: The Family, A Broken Dog, tag rebuilt. The article was scheduled to go live that evening, along with a national veterans campaign to reform MIA status reporting. Daniel stood in the garage doorway watching it all. He didn't need to speak. This was the ending he never knew he needed. Later that evening, just before sunset, Daniel found himself sitting alone beneath the old windmill behind the bar. Bella walked up, slowly carrying a folded piece of paper. She handed it to him. "What's this?" he asked. "My Christmas wish list?" She grinned. He unfolded it. There were only 3 items. 1. More chocolate chip pancakes. 2. Mom and Dad never leave again. 3. Can I keep the real dog tag for when I'm older? Daniel's throat tightened. He nodded. You can keep it right now. He unclipped the real dog tag from his neck and looped it gently around hers. The weight was small, but the meaning was eternal. She looked up. Are we going to be okay now? He knelt, pulling her close. Baby, he whispered. We already are. That night, as stars pierced the sky and the fire pit crackled out back, Daniel stood with Travis, Tessa, and a few of the old Iron Hawks by his side. In his hand, he held the green jacket. Frayed at the cuffs, stitch marks across the shoulder, the scent of war sweat and years. He took one long breath, then tossed it into the flames. The fire took it slowly, as if honoring its service before consuming it completely. Tessa reached for his hand. He laced his fingers through hers. Travis raised a flask. To the man who came in with nothing and gave us back our reason. Daniel smiled quietly. He watched the jacket disappear, the fire glowing on Bella's face as she laughed nearby. And he knew truly deeply that he was no longer a shadow of a soldier. He was a father. Home. If this story touched your heart, we'd love to hear from you. Tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? We're always amazed to see how kindness and hope connect people from every corner of the world. And if you'd like to hear more stories of courage, family, and redemption, don't forget to subscribe to Soul Moment Story and stay part of this growing circle of light. Thank you truly for spending your time with us today. Until next time, stay kind, stay strong, and never stop believing in the good that still lives in people.